reviewing all the Eragon books, probably 10 years after I read them. Maybe even more than 10 years, maybe 12 years, something like this. So, what is Eragon? Even though it sounds very similar to the character Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, Eragon is something different. And this something different also has a movie. And the movie didn't fulfill my expectations because this is just, I guess, a psychological effect of reading books and making up your own world, and then realizing that the movie makers just didn't make exactly your world. Kind of a problem of movies being made about books in general, I guess, because obviously all the people reading the books don't have the exact same vision as the director has, and also books are usually a lot longer. So now I was really intrigued by the premise. So what's the premise? The premise is this: Eragon is the chosen one. I mean, obviously, what else would be the premise of any story? Like, it's the same with Harry Potter, it's the same with Eragon, it's the same with Neo in the Matrix, it's the same with every other story. It's the same with Arthur and King Arthur. He's the chosen one, and he's the only one who can do the thing. Yeah, well, but back to Eragon. So there is one movie, which is kind of nice. I mean, it's a good movie. It's not that it's a very bad movie, it's just compared to what you thought of the world of Eragon looked like, and if you compare these things, then obviously there's a difference. So I was not really surprised by how the movie turned out. I saw it and I was like, okay, I saw this movie. So what's the basic premise of Eragon? Eragon is the chosen one, and there are dragons and there are humans, and basically dragons in Eragon are kind of similar to in Game of Thrones, I guess. So the premise is kind of similar, but not so much, not up to this part. It's much more like, imagine the dragons much more being let's talk about the chosen one again, like Avatar. I mean, I don't know the name of Sam Worthing in Avatar, but he's also the chosen one, obviously. He's the only one who can connect these two worlds because he has the ability to switch in between those worlds. But now, the dragons kind of exist, and the dragons also are very intelligent. I actually cannot really remember if Saphira, so the dragon actually Eragon then gets, can actually speak, or cannot speak, or just share thoughts, or something like this. I think she cannot speak. I mean, it's also much more of a mystery, because if you actually let these characters speak, then obviously most of the time they just speak as if they were humans, and then it's not a big mystery anymore, because it's just like, oh yeah, hi, just don't do it again. I mean, I don't want to breathe fire today. I don't. We already did it yesterday. I mean, it's just, I mean, I guess it's funny, but at the same time, it just removes the layer of mystery. It's like listening to a foreign language without understanding the foreign language. It's kind of a mystery. And then it sounds so nice, for example, if you talk about spaghetti in Italian. But then eventually you find out that it's just like, oh yeah, I made spaghetti with tomato sauce, and that's it. So it was not that important anyway. But coming back to Eragon. So Eragon actually knows this one guy, and this one guy turns out to be one of the last dragon riders. So in the past there was like a connection between the dragons and the humans, and this connection was the following: that chosen humans basically were able to ride these dragons, and they kind of ruled. I don't really know what the governmental structure looked like in Eragon before Eragon's time, but essentially when Eragon grows up, everything is kind of broken, and there are these myths out there about the old dragon legacy, dragon rider legacy. But then something happened, and basically I think there is like one bad guy. I cannot really remember who are the bad guys in Eragon. I think there is like this one guy, basically, if you compare it to the Jesus story, it's Judas. Is it actually pronounced Judas or Judas? I don't quite know. But betrays all the others, and I think there is one who killed all the other dragon riders. I cannot. Yeah, I think this was the story, and but I just can't quite remember who actually then is the enemy. I think the enemy is this one guy who wants to possess the dragon eggs that are left, because there are like 3 or 4 dragon eggs left, and now it's obviously the mission for this evil guy to kind of get also these dragons and to then rule the world of Eragon. Also the white balance is kind of off here within the video. So Eragon actually discovers one of these eggs because Boromir, I think his name is Boromir, or is it out of the Lord of the Rings? Is there also? I think there is also a Boromir. Maybe it's the same name. I don't quite know. So there's this one guy who turns out to be, later turns out to be one of the last dragon riders, and he basically teaches Eragon. So here we have again the role of the student and the teacher, and also it's quite convenient that the student doesn't know anything about the world, just like in Harry Potter, because otherwise we wouldn't find out about all the things in this world. Because if there is someone in the story that basically has our eyes or views the world through our eyes, like just not knowing anything about this world, then that's very convenient, because then you can actually make the character ask all of these questions we have and basically interact with this world. So then Eragon kind of gets trained by this last dragon rider, but he obviously doesn't know about this last dragon rider thing. And he also, I think he finds a dragon egg in the forest, and I don't quite know if there are also elves. I think there are also elves. Yeah, pretty similar to Lord of the Rings, I guess. Yeah, there are also elves, because Eragon is actually then kind of has a elf girlfriend along the way, and the girlfriend actually is the one who kind of is there in the beginning, because she gets chased, gets chased by one of the bad guys. And now let's go with the story. The story is not so boring, it just seems, because I'm yawning. Now it really intrigued me, and obviously you identify on your own with the person who is the hero. That's, I mean, the premise of many of these things. Identifying with Harry Potter, identifying with Eragon, identifying with Frodo, because he's just somebody who doesn't know anything about all of this. And yeah, I just enjoyed these books so much, because Harry Potter is nice, but it's also, Harry Potter is so much about, like, basically, it's a huge part of Harry Potter is basically High School Musical without the musical, but just within a wizard school. So it's still like school dynamics and social dynamics, and like he cheated on me and blah blah blah. And this is a huge portion of Harry Potter, I guess. I mean, obviously Harry Potter also has something to do, but I just enjoyed that the social dynamics actually were not as present in Eragon. So obviously there's a lot of fights going on, and Eragon is kind of the chosen one, and also the underdog, and well, that's basically all what I can remember, because apart from the story, so the beginning story, there is not very much that's happening, I guess. I don't even know if he finally then, I don't even know what the final story is. I mean, Boromir dies along the way, and what's the conclusion to the story? It's a good question. So, as a resolution, I very much enjoyed these books. I enjoyed reading fantasy. I also read like Harry Potter, but I wasn't just not that intrigued by Harry Potter, because when I first read the books, I already had seen the first movie. I actually saw the first 2 or 3 movies before I actually read the books. Maybe even 4 movies, because I just am not that old. Because Harry Potter, the books came out quite some time ago. Then the movies came out like from the year 2000 until like 2015 or 12, 13, something like this. And well, I just enjoyed indulging myself in a completely fantastic world. I also read Lord of the Rings. The problem with Lord of the Rings I kind of had is that it was, so I read it in English and, or maybe in German, I can't quite remember, but just the language, the translations were like 25, 30, 40, 50 years old, and just the language they used was just so odd, and it was just not very, it was just strange, because they just used this old words, and yeah, well, so much about reading The Lord of the Rings. And yeah,